I can go onto my little tiny rural community and I can find out what my mayor makes, what all the councillors make. I can find out, by and large, how they voted, where all the spending is. There's a full forensic audit done. I know the money coming in. I know the money coming out. First Nations people are entitled to that too. This is a town just like any other town, and they deserve to know where the band-owned businesses are spending their money, who's getting that money. They don't even know how much their chief makes. Isn't that outrageous? Yeah. And the point of all of this is, and I mentioned it, I sort of touched on it, the First Nations Transparency Act, Financial Transparency Act. It was passed in 2013 by Stephen Harper. And the First Nations Financial Transparency Act required that 581 First Nations make their audited, consolidated financial statements and the pay and expenses of chief and council available to their members, as well as publish it on a website. These financial documents included under this old law, audited financial statements, pay, auditor's written report respecting the consolidated financial statement. So anything that may be hinky that is noted by the financial auditor, that should be listed there too. And so this was something that Stephen Harper did to provide accountability to band members. And it doesn't mean that your chief is ripping you off, but if your chief isn't ripping you off, he should be happy to say, here's what I make, here's what I spent your money on, here's the investments of the band. Stephen Harper did that. What is one of the very first things Justin Trudeau did? December 2015, 1 month after getting elected, Justin Trudeau did away with this. And now, here we go. We've got a problem in a very rich First Nation at Frog Lake, where $120 million has just disappeared off the books, and they don't have any recourse. They don't have any recourse. They've tried to force, and God help them, they've tried to force an audit, but there's no obligation for there to be an audit. There's no law on the books that they're entitled to any of this. This is a monstrosity, and this is not reconciliation.
Well, you pointed out this note about the fact that they wanted anonymity for fear of retribution. Yeah, a mob that's just stolen $100 million, they're gonna have some power. This is the problem. It is run like a small town Italian mob city. What happens out here, and it's upsetting, because what happened with Stephen Harper, they effectively called him a fascist. They were calling him Hitler. They were calling Harper all these terrible things. And what he was doing was bringing the same level of dignity and respect that you or I would expect when we're paying taxes, that same level of accountability. He was bringing that to First Nations people so that they would be on even footing. It wouldn't be the chief and friends living in luxury and the community living in squalor. There would be some transparency. That was probably, that law, one of the biggest steps forward in improving the quality and caliber of life and reducing corruption among some of these communities. Now, don't get me wrong, some of these chiefs are great, don't take much salary, generate a lot of business, bring people in. Let's take, for example, the Wet'suwet'en, the actual elected Wet'suwet'en officials who are bringing in jobs and creating lucrative employment for their communities. So there are chiefs out there. This is not to make a blanket statement to say that all these band councils are corrupt. Far from it, in fact. But if a band council is corrupt, you need these mechanisms to counteract them, because otherwise you can effectively have people taking millions and millions of dollars with no accountability whatsoever. And then they exercise such power that people are afraid to even come forward and say, yeah, that guy stole $25 million, $100 million is missing here, $100 million is missing there. What this boils down to ultimately, though, is Justin Trudeau revoked that law so that they could do sketchy business and use the Indigenous smokescreen to cover up those dealings. I have little doubt that, maybe not in this case particularly, but very often it is big contract companies, SNC-Lavalin, these major law firms that aren't doing nothing to help Indigenous communities, but are doing a lot to line their pockets. And they're only getting away with it because there's no transparency with these organizations. So yeah, this is, I mean, ultimately what this, I'm not trying to sound woke here or anything, but it's just racist. It's treating a group of Canadians with a sort of infantilizing attitude, and like they're not meritorious of the same level of respect and accountability that we would expect from our leaders. Most of these bans are now elected representation, and with elected representation should come transparency and accountability. There's space to respect traditions, and there is space to honor the autonomy of these First Nations people on their quote unquote unceded land. But when the government is giving them massive sums of money, and when those sums of money are mysteriously going missing and people are afraid to even dare speak out about it because of fear of retribution, there's clearly a need for transparency, accountability, and forensic auditing.
First Nations people are entitled to the same level of transparency that every other Canadian resident is. That's what this comes down to. Sorry, I wasn't ignoring you as you were talking. I was furiously Googling something because I wanted to just show you the level of lack of accountability that takes place here. Jason Kenney's salary is $186,000 plus, some perks. $186,000.
That's still too much, but yeah.
yeah. $186,000 plus some perks, and they had a pay cut not too long ago of about 5%. But Alberta politicians remain the highest paid in the entire country, and there are 4.5 million Albertans. Seems like being the premier of Alberta might be a big job. Anyways, Frog Lake First Nation. The former chief, Clifford Stanley of Frog Lake First Nation, which it seems like it's under the former chief where all of these losses took place, Clifford Stanley, who's related, by the way, to the lady who's trying to get accountability. They're related through marriage. Back a few years ago, he did actually reveal his salary. However, there was no obligation for him to do so. From 2017 to 2018, his salary was $104,000 plus $151,000 in travel and $61,000 from the FLER, bringing his salary to over $300,000. He makes nearly twice, or he did nearly twice what the Alberta premier does. The councillors, by the way, when you see the population of Frog Lake, you're going to be like, how are there several councillors? There's should be 2, and it should be a part-time job. Several councillors are earning more than $150,000, so close to what the premier makes. The premier of Alberta, 4.5 million people. You know how many people are in Frog Lake? 3,300. Oh, hi. That was a clip from our Rebel Daily live stream. It's hosted Monday, Wednesday, and Friday by the big boss man, Ezra Levant, and Tuesdays and Thursdays by me, Sheila Gunn Reid, and my good friend, David Menzies. On the live stream, we talk about the news of the day, we show some videos, and we interact with our viewers at home. We stream at 12 noon Eastern, 10 Mountain. You can find us on YouTube, Rumble, Super U, and Odyssey.